standing for the invocation. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Pastor Bill Good from the Fountain Hills Presbyterian Church. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Would you pray with me? God of our days and Lord of our lives, we give you thanks that we can gather here in hope and freedom to be about the business of Fountain Hills. We pray now that you would be very present here among this group of leaders, that you would bring grace to their conversations and wisdom to their decisions. We ask that your purposes would be made clear to them in their deliberations, and that your will would give direction to their decisions. May the work that will be done here today honor the long tradition of visionary leadership which has so vividly characterized this community. May these men and women be mindful of the responsibilities that attend our history, but may they also be open to the possibilities that accrue to our future. May they represent all the people of Fountain Hills with justice, integrity, enthusiasm, and compassion. It is with deep thanksgiving that we gather here as people who recognize you through many different traditions. We praise you in all the diverse names by which we know you. Yet we offer this prayer to you with one voice as we join together to celebrate you as the one God who is creator and ruler of all. Amen.
Thank you. I think it looks like we can go straight to call to the public. Do we have any cards? Oh, right, roll call. Sorry about that.
Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tolas.
Here.
Councilmember Charno.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Magazine.
Here.
Councilmember LaCrone.
Here.
Councilmember Spellich.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards yet?
Yes, for call to the public, we have Bob Shellstrom.
Thank you. Welcome, Bob.
Hello, I'm Bob Shellstrom, and I'm a resident of Fountain Hills. We all make mistakes, but what's important for leaders is to go in and find out why you made that mistake and take actions never to repeat it again. One of the things I've been looking, and I spoke to Mr. Miller about, was what's our quality improvement approach when a project or a program goes bad? And I believe that we really don't have a formal system for doing this. A couple cases in point. On our Fountain Hills Road project, Mr. Brown, I know, is very well recognized and highly qualified in the construction trade. He knows that when you bid on a project, sometimes a project's too small to get a lot of natural interest. And some people give what's called a throwaway bid. They'll figure out about how much it's worth and put a ridiculous number on top, and if you're rejected, so what? If you get it and get that massive increase and somebody's foolish enough to hire you for it, well, then you make a lot of money. It seems like this was the case with this Fountain Hills project, but there's a way around it. We had a $500,000 grant for the job, as I understand it. It came in over $800,000. There was only one bidder who was bid through Arizona DOT. Now, I've been in this situation with these projects over many years when I've worked on behalf of clients. And what you do when you have a project that's not particularly attractive is you call up everybody who's done work for your organization before. People you might have done sole source work with in paving, people who you've given change orders to on fixed price projects. And you let them know you'd really appreciate it if they submitted a bid for the project that was competitive. That way, when you have 3 or 4 of those people in there, the bids get competitive and you get a better deal. Who knows? This could have supported, maybe saved us $350,000 on the deal. We don't know. That's why the smart thing to do in that case would have been to rebid, call these vendors, get them to do the bid. It takes a little action, but not a lot of time, really. That's something, what are we going to do the next time we get a situation like this? Right now, there's not a plan. Second case in point, our sweeping contract. Apparently, somebody really wanted to give this job to whoever the sweeper was in Mesa, which is fine. So rather than do a competitive bid for this project, which was $90,000 a year, we wanted to do an extension to their contract, which would preclude a requirement to be able to competitively bid it. Well, that was fine until that contractor got a little greedy. and they asked for double Mesa's rates for normal street cleaning and triple the rates for special events. After that, we didn't know what to do. So Mr. Weldy quite appropriately started calling other people. But at that point, as Mr. Brown can tell you, once they know this deal is pretty much geared towards one person, they're wasting their time giving you a number, and they're just getting a number shopped around to get negotiations going with them. So consequently, of 10 people we called, 10 said, no thanks, we're not playing that game, and I guess one told us, never call me again for this kind of thing. So the bottom line is, that was a big fail. Now, everybody makes mistakes. This can happen. The question is, what are we doing to make sure that we're not repeating that sort of mistake? And I look forward to, with interest, the way you guys are going to come up with a program to see how that's prevented. We got a big project coming up this summer. Thank you.
I'm not able to respond, am I?
Thank you. We can't respond, obviously. Aaron?
You're able to respond to criticism, no substantive discussion of the item since it's not on the agenda.
Yes, Councilman Magazine?
Bob, you're obviously an intelligent fellow. I'm waiting for the day that you come before us and tell us that we've done something right. Because in your mind, there's nothing we ever do that is correct or done the way you think it should be done. And I got to tell you, that doesn't sit well with me.
That's fine. Just to respond to his comment.
I guess we don't really do back and forth, do we? Sorry about that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah, it's sort of a formal situation here, but thank you. Maybe when, at the end of the meeting, when we say we'll go forward, we'll maybe ask staff to get together with you on some numbers.
I have a couple other quick comments here tonight, so I'll get a chance to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other cards? No? Okay, thank you. We'll go to the consent agenda. I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Our regular agenda, we have a consideration of a special event liquor application license. Is this you, Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, the item before you is a request for a special event liquor license application for the town of Fountain Hills. Essentially, we have our Music Fest celebration coming up. It's going to be held on Saturday, April 6th. And in the past, we've had residents who've attended this and have enjoyed it, but they had asked it'd be really nice if we could have beer and wine at this. We reached out to a company that is a local microbrewery that is able to serve its microbrews. And so because they're not a nonprofit, they couldn't obtain a special event liquor license, which is only for nonprofits. And the State Liquor License Control Board over the last couple years, I believe, has opened this up to municipalities so that they can now qualify for holding a special event liquor license application. The way that this will work is under this agreement with Bonehouse Brewery. They will be the ones serving the alcohol, and we will revenue share in the sales that are over $4,000. So this is something that we're going to see how it works, and we have also, due to my concerns about liquor liability, we have also taken out a modest-priced rider for insurance to ensure that the town is protected, just in case anything were to happen. So we also have staff here. Grace, our communications and marketing coordinator, is here. If you have any further questions about the details, she'd be happy to come up to the podium and answer your questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I love the fact that we're doing everything we can to promote activity at the park and bring tourism. I love the billboard that you put up on the Beeline, which I believe was paid for through a grant, so that's important to know. I am interested in your comment in regards to revenue sharing and how that contract is laid out. With having some experience with negotiating some of these deals with some nonprofits, one of which is the Rotary that both you and I are involved in, I'd like to know how that 4,000 comes about and what the projections are. We did it a little differently, and it was based on a per beer profit margin.
Certainly, and so because this is the first time endeavor for staff with Music Festa. Grady's correct in mentioning that we had not done this before, and citizens had asked us for that beer component amongst the musical festivities. The contract came about through conversations with the owners of Bonehouse Brewing, who elaborated and enlightened Rachel and I to their wholesale costs of what it would be to bring out their cooling truck, which is what they pour from, as well as hiring the staff who would pour and the minimum 20 kegs that we are asking them to brew exclusively for this event. And so their wholesale cost was calculated at $4,000. And since we were negotiating the partnership and splitting the responsibilities, staff is not able to pour beer. We are not trained or licensed to do so. And so in asking Bonehouse to bring their staff, who is licensed to do so in a responsible way, we then split the responsibilities, being that the town would hold the liquor permit. We would also hire the officers who would facilitate responsible ID checks in exchange for Bonehouse meeting that minimum requirement of beer brewing and also being the ones to provide the staffing and facilitation for this.
Okay.
And if I could just add, I mean, there's really no risk to the town in terms of most of the events you typically see where you may have like a major distributor for the Arizona for beer sales. And they typically either give it at cost or it's actually donated, like what you typically see for like the Oktoberfest and such. In this case, this is a local brewery, and so they had their overhead costs. So we're not exposed to any costs other than obtaining this license and also having the rider. And I believe the rider was under $500 for this. And it would have been, the nice thing is we learned about this, we could actually, if this event was a weekend long event, that insurance rider would have been the same price for 1 day, 1 hour, or 3-day weekend.
It is, and so when they provided their wholesale cost of $4,000, we then negotiated that with them fulfilling their responsibilities of that, and us not have doing beer at this event before, we don't know. Although Rachel and I feel that this will be perceived very well, it's a new mechanism and we don't know the exact attendance. In years past without an alcohol component, we see anywhere from 35 to 4,500 people who show up to this event. With the added advertising of the billboard, what we've done online, and this new component to the garden in the festivities, we feel like that will bring a larger crowd, but we just don't have anything to measure it against. And so if we do not do $4,000 in sales, Bonehouse will not require the town to pay anything forth into that. They will keep the under. However, if we cross $4,001, we move into a profit sharing scenario where we retain 60% and they retain 40%.
Okay, any other questions? Any speaker cards?
No.
Thank you. Would anybody like to make a motion then? It's on page 30.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, we, did you get that? Should I say it?
Well, we have two items. We
Yeah,
have-
there's 1 and 2. One is the approval of the license and the other is approving the agreement. So, but it's all in one motion. So is that understood?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
And I suppose we'll just say cheers.
Thank you. Next is item 8B, consideration of approval of Wildan for a user fee study. Grady?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor and Council are aware, we've been trying to evaluate our situation with our upcoming budgets and finances, and one of the things that we realize that we need to do periodically is take a look at our user fees. And our user fees, I believe, constitute probably about 15% of our overall revenue picture. What we have before you tonight is a contract for a company by the name of Wildan to conduct a user fee study. User fees would be everything that we do for the town in terms of what we charge for permits, for rental fees. Every charge that we have in our fee schedule is going to be taken a look at, and they're going to look at, in addition to those fees, they're going to look at the overhead costs associated with providing those services. And then that firm is going to then come back to you and present their findings and recommendations. So I think this is a good thing. I can't remember the last time we actually had a comprehensive user fee study, but most cities and towns do it about every 10 years, and they do adjustments about every year, but they don't do a major one for about every 10 years. So it's long overdue since we didn't really have a record the last time this was done.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councilman Spellich.
Grady and Aaron, is this mandated by state law that is there any law that says that we have to do this?
No, one thing, and you know, I think that Craig has spoken to this in the staff report as well, that state statute does require is that the amount of a fee be reasonably related to the cost of what the town's incurring from providing the services. So this is one step towards ensuring that that our fees would withstand scrutiny.
What I'm concerned about is, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
Oh, go ahead.
What I'm concerned about is the cost of this $36,000. I mean, it's a lot of money, and I guess what I would think is a way that this could possibly be tackled, and of course, other council members can chime in. I believe that we're talking about fees for the community center, fees for the ball fields, fees for just anything that the town charges. Each of those building permits and everything too.
Absolutely.
I would think that a director of each of these particular divisions could direct somebody on their staff to have them call around or do some internet research and everything. I just feel that it's a lot of money. $36,000 is a considerable amount of money. If it's not mandated by the state for this to be done, I would like to see some way that we could problem solve this and do it in-house, but it's a lot of money.
Councilwoman Cron?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a quick question. Have we raised fees in the last 10 years? And if so, how did we land on the amount that we've raised certain fees?
So that's a good question. Every year, we actually have a fee schedule that goes before council as part of the budget adoption. And we do what I would call incremental fee increases. But the fees are really more or less there's not really necessarily a cost of service basis. I mean, we try to do that. There's a lot of, for instance, there's fees that are statutorily that we cannot exceed the state statute on, like maybe photocopying fees and things like that. But there are other fees that that we come up with, and we don't really have, in my opinion, more of a justification of that we need to increase the fees. And so what I like about this is we get a methodology that we'll get out of this in addition to the fee schedule that they'll come back and recommend to the council, and then the council can determine, you know, how high you want some of these fees to go. We'll also have what I call the methodology or the model that will make it easier in the future for us to go ahead and make adjustments to those fees. So this, I think, is really a good step in the right direction. I understand from Councilmember Spellich's concern, but at the same time, I feel that with a very lean and small staff, it would take months to get what we need here. And, you know, we're trying to deal with this in a quick fashion, and I just don't think we're going to get there. They also look at things that I'm not sure my staff is capable of looking at, and that is overhead costs. You know, so they'll do the true cost of service that it costs to provide the service and come up with the fees based on that. And they look at everything from, you know, our salaries, our utilities, our, you know, everything that you can come up with. And they have been very effective in getting these defensible. So whatever they recommend are easily defended if they're ever challenged.
Councilman Magazine?
It occurs to me that I have no idea what the results obviously would be of such a study. But I would guess that a number of the fees would be raised so that they're commensurate with the activities for which they're paid. I would think that $36,000 could be recovered probably within, I'm guessing, a year, 2 years. And then we continue from that on to have that increased income. So I know $36,000 is a lot, but in the maybe not even the long run, intermediate run, it may put more money in our coffers.
Mayor,
Councilman, Vice Mayor?
thank you. I don't have the town budget in front of me right now, but I'd like our finance director to tell me how much we collect in fees right now.
Welcome.
Greetings, Vice Mayor. Believe it or not, I don't have that figure off the top of my head, but town manager's estimate of roughly 10% of our fees are coming from, 10% of our budget is coming from fees. So out of an $11 million budget, that'd be $1 million. But a lot of those fees are development impact fees, which this study will not address. We have a separate study going on for development impact fees. The majority of these fees are for community service type fees, community center rentals, park rentals, Ramada rentals, and one point that...
And development fees.
Yeah.
I mean, not development fees, but permit fees.
Building permit fees, yes. Several years ago, legislature passed a bill requiring, as the town attorney mentioned, that we have to post on the town's website any fee changes 60 days ahead of time, and then we have to provide justification. Our past justification has only been, we think the fees need to be increased or comparable, but we don't have anything to base it on. So,
Vice Mayor?
Okay, so as a follow-up question, now that you've clarified that the building permit fees is a separate study that is outside of this particular user fee study, correct?
no, we have development impact fees, which can be only used for future growth-related projects. That is not part of this study.
Not part of the
But
study.
the normal building permit fees for new homes, for construction, for additions, that is included as part of this study.
And you make a point in regards to the community center fees and things. Do you know what our rentals are on an annualized basis? Are we to capacity? Is every weekend booked at this community center now?
Hi, Rachel, thanks.
No problem. As you might guess, the community center is very seasonal. At this time of year, yes, every weekend is booked. Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week, we have something almost going on. For instance, this weekend we have our Watch and Clock convention. There's no shortage of activities. Yes, if you look at maybe July and August and early September, it's much slower. But in terms of impact, the community center has shown a continual uptick in use. Absolutely.
Councilman Sharna?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I agree with Councilman Spellage. I mean, $36,000 is a lot of money, and it seems like the last year or two, any kind of study proposed seems to have a negative connotation. But on the other hand, besides the methodology that Grady was talking about, I think it'd be wise and helpful moving forward to have kind of a independent third party come in and evaluate these things and give an independent recommendation on these things rather than having it all come from staff.
Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this is a Grady question or not, but is the Denver organization doing a development impact fee study again this year? Pepper Tree or something like that?
Craig, do you remember the development fee? That's Tischler Beese, I believe, is doing it.
Tischler Bice is the firm that is currently working on the development fee study.
In fact, Tischler is the one that developed the whole development impact fee models back in the 80s, like when Prop 13 went into effect in California. They were the early adopters. I know a lot of the fast-growing communities in the 80s in the valley here had Tischler do their models. In fact, if you look at their client list, they're the who's who of the cities and towns throughout the whole state. So they're the preeminent one doing the study on the development fees.
And to put this into perspective, do you remember what we're paying for this development fee study?
The development fee study is between 49 and 50,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought. If I could, Mayor, that puts it in perspective that the development fee is one fee, and every 5 years we go through this with the development fee? Every 5 years, we have to pay a firm to come tell us how much development fee we can actually collect. And then I guess the state tells us where we can spend it. And that's why the $36,000 is not alarming to me, because in the 10 years that I've been on council, I do not remember having a firm actually look at our fees. The council has always simply said, oh, that we can't charge that for the community center because it's too much money for the single income earners, and on and on. And I mean, we've worked the fees over hard, and this year we didn't. And I assume it's because we've got a firm hired to do it for us. And I commend you for doing that, because it's a task.
Are there speaker cards? Yes.
Bob Shellstrom.
Hello, I'm Bob Shellstrom from Fountain Hills, and I want to thank the board for doing the attachments, including this contract, because there are a lot of places in town that don't, like the school district, where you have to actually file public information requests to get this. Having read it online, it sounds like a really good idea, because you got to get these things in balance, and it's no different than pricing for services. You have to figure out what are your costs, what margins do you want, and what is the fair amount based on comparison with others. Based on Mr. Brown's excellent comment, I guess the first question I would have that you can answer after I get done is there any overlap between these two studies? Because reading it, it seemed like their scope of work included development, or certainly did not exclude it. I may have missed it. Okay, but it's something to check, just to make sure we're not doing double duty. One of the things I've had a concern about that I hope will be in this, and this really applies more to the development, I think, but also to other fees, is there's typically a sliding fee schedule based on cost of project. And you have to get, for example, your plan review and inspection fees. And usually the town comes up with a payment fee to consultants to do that. I know when I was looking into the Park Place facility, I saw we paid $265,000 according to the contract just for plan review and inspection. At $100 an hour, that comes to what, about 2,650 hours? My guess is they probably didn't spend that on that much time, but they still got the money. In this kind of application, what I've had experience doing whenever I did sole sourcing of work like this, and this should be of interest to Mr. Spellich, is you don't just take a fixed price. You make them justify it. What you say is, you want $36,000? Fine. Give us the list of how it's being spent for travel, copies, for the people you will be assigning to the project, which were listed in there, what their hourly rate was, and how many hours we expect them to have on it. If it turns out you're paying $200 an hour for a clerk, right away you start asking questions. This has been a part of due diligence in this with every organization I'd worked with on a sole source contract. I don't believe we did that here, at least it wasn't in the documents. But that should happen every time you're sole sourcing, particularly for professional services. That's all I had to say. Thank you. Just wanted to once again compliment you guys for listening to this, and that's quite attractive time, Mr. Magazine. Thank you.
Thanks. So this is on the agenda, so we can address any of that if you'd like. Craig or anybody?
Mayor, Council, just for the record, this contract was the result of a request for proposals. It was advertised. We received 8 responses. The evaluation committee was formed, and Wildan Financial Services was the successful respondent with the lowest cost for the services desired. And in the scope of the RFP, the development impact fees were specifically excluded from consideration because we had this separate study going on just for the user fees.
Thank you. And again, just to go back to the development fee aspect of it, it's so narrow, and it's can only be for actual expenses that are a result of more population, and there's thresholds to meet, and so it is very separate. I wish I could pull up my budget right here, because then you would see the schedule of fees because I hate to, like, ask Craig, how many fees do you think there are? But you'd be surprised when you do see them, what a big part of the consideration of our budget it is. And I can remember many years ago kind of going through and doing a little bit of what Councilman Brown was talking about, saying, oh, let's make that one lower. And, you know, I think it is better to have a basis that there are some technical things that some of us and some of our staff either doesn't have time or doesn't have the expertise. And a little bit off the subject, but at my last MAG meeting, they're a planning organization, and so you know, if you ever got tired of hearing about studies, that's kind of literally why they exist, and they do have a role and they do have a part. And I know sometimes we get a little weary of studying things, but it's also kind of a way as you move forward to spend your money and to pursue things that are logical and rational. So they're not, you know, it's not one thing or the other all the time. Are there any other comments about this item? Oh, yes, Vice Mayor?
I'm going to agree with Councilman Spielik on this one. For $36,000, I think I could put somebody in this town hall for 6 months, and all they do is study the fee all day long, 8 hours a day, and we'd find out that I just think that's a lot of money for these fees. So I'm going to agree with you.
Councilman Spelch?
If we're paying $36,000 so that the town has a reason to articulate why we charge the fees we do, we could save a whole bunch of money if we adopt what it was in my household. It was the because I said so. And it seemed to work really well. And we'll save 36 grand. So that's my opinion.
Councilwoman?
Well, in addition to that, we're paying for them to determine whether or not we're charging enough, and if we're not, we're going to make up that cost. It's going to help us. I mean, we may find that we are charging enough, but if we're not, we're losing money. So I'm in favor of it for that reason.
Councilman Brown?
Not to wear this out, but maybe we do need to just have a work study session on specifically fees like we have in the past. So it will become quite evident that we have so many fees and we have no idea if the fees are anywhere close to being the right amount, too much or too little. And it becomes pretty evident fairly quickly as you go down the list, the tick list of all the different fees, if we're in line at all with even attempting to pay for the services that we're getting over at the community center, in town hall. We really don't know. And it might be a wise gesture just to do that so the new council people can see the task that is before us to set those fees. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Manager?
I was just going to say, as part of this, built into the fees is for them to come back and give a presentation. I think a work session would make a lot of sense because to Councilmember Brown's point, there are some times with like maybe fees that you want to make sure that they're not overly high for like youth and seniors. And so there may be some things that you will want to debate and make sure that you're on board with. Other fees, you know, where you want to have full cost recovery, and that's what it's all about on like a lot of like, for instance, on the permit fees and things of that sort or rentals. So that is part of the plan, correct, Craig? That we'll be having them come back and give a full presentation, and I think a work session makes a lot of sense because I think it's beyond what a typical council meeting would be able to deal with. So we will do that.
Vice Mayor?
Last comment, I'm just thinking, you know, it's what the market will bear. It's what people are willing to pay, and if it's a necessity and it's a requirement that they pay a certain fee to have usage for a certain town amenity. And whether that fee is not justified for our costs is not going to be the answer to this study. Because if the costs are excessive, we may not be able to charge a fee higher enough to even cover the cost. That's what we're doing. We're providing a service and we're providing amenities to our community. I think we can first look at these fees. I'm not opposed to having a little work study session and evaluating what these fees are. We are in Fountain Hills, Arizona, and other communities that have similar amenities, similar population. we can evaluate very quickly what they're charging for their fees, and I think $36,000 can be saved.
Councilman Magazine?
I don't think it's that simple. I don't think we can just look at the panoply of user fees and say, how close does it come to supporting this or supporting that? I think it's a very complicated undertaking. Again, I believe this will pay for itself and add money to our coffers. I move approval.
That's a motion. Do I have a second?
Mayor, I do have another card.
Oh, we can, okay, well, let's take a second and then we can hear.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Speaker card?
Michelle Webb?
Good evening. Hi.
Hi, how are you all doing? Just two questions, very simple on this. Where's the break even? Have we even thought about, as you talk about, $36,000 is a lot of money to take a look at fees? And then the second question I have is, what are other towns charging? Can we not find out from other towns what are their fees like? So that would be way less expensive than spending $36,000 doing this study. I mean, I can pick up a telephone and call another town and say, okay, how much do you charge for your community center? I'd be happy to volunteer and do some of that. So those are types of things that I look at this and I say, we're in a town that we are having some financial difficulties. $36,000 is $36,000 that we could put someplace else. So I just question, A, where's the break even? And two, could we check out where other towns are charging that kind of price?
Mayor?
Thank you. Councilman Magazine?
I appreciate the comment, and I've heard a couple of people say we should check with other towns. I don't know how you compare apples to apples. We have a community center with certain activities. Other towns have community centers with certain activities, a lot of which are probably different from ours, or more expansive than ours, and so on and so forth. And I could get down the list of all the user fees that we have and how we determine from other towns how it relates in any way to ours gives me some pause.
Any other comments? Councilman Spellich?
I promise this is the last comment. I have enough faith in the directors in this town that manage their individual divisions to be able to make informed decisions to us, telling us what we should charge. And I swear, that's all I'm going to say.
Councilman Brown?
So, thank you, Mayor. Grady, what's the timeline on this contract? When do we have to have this out?
The timeline is, we're trying to get this done. We don't believe that the fees will be ready until probably next fiscal year, correct? So it'd be, you have a 60-day from the time that it's completed. We anticipate they will be done with the study by the end of June, correct?
End of June, end of July.
End of June, end of July. So we're not going to meet the window for next fiscal year. However, it's not uncommon for cities to make adjustments to their fees mid-year. And so I was hoping that the council could evaluate these, take action, and have them go into effect, say, by December of 2019. And we have and by the way, under state law, we have a 60-day noticing from the time that you decide to make adjustments to the fees, that you have to give all this notice and meetings and all that, so.
And I will go back to my past history. And like a great example is the community center, and you call Mesa, and what does Mesa include in their fee? And then you look at our community center, and we don't have a kitchen, and they've got a kitchen. They've got specialized rooms for computers. We set ours up and take them down every time we have a computer class. I mean, I can just tell you that if we could set through 2 nights of trying to determine if our current fees too low or too high or just right, 2 nights won't get us through the first half of the fees. And that's seriously my experience from the past councils.
Thank you. Anybody else? I just want to mention that when we had our retreat and when we'll be talking about the budget, one of the things that we talked about with all of these possible ways of revenue, and this was part of it, was that we would have this knowledge by July or so that might help going forward with some of the decisions that we have to make and with revenue enhancement or expenditure reduction. So I would be more comfortable having this sort of study that will give us figures that we can rely on, that are guaranteed to be professionally arrived at. And I do think that if we had, started counting up the hours of staff to do this, that, and not to mention the fact that it would take away from some of the other things that they need to do, that at this time I'm feeling that this would be a good thing to move forward with. So we do have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? Oh, okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Are you clear?
Motion passes 5-2.
Thank you very much. We appreciate everybody's input. We understand. Next is the adoption of Resolution 2019 about the IGA with the sanitary district. Grady?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You recall a couple months ago, we had a presentation from Dana Tromke from the sanitary district. She is the general manager and had a proposal before you regarding installing 2 control rooms as part of bathroom structures that would be included in Fountain Park. This item before you is an intergovernmental agreement which would basically authorize the installation of the 2 bathrooms at the 2 locations that previously were discussed. Based on the feedback that we received from Councilmember Brown about the awkwardness of having the door in the back of the building that would lead into the custodial closet, we were able to get some design change so that would be to the front, which we appreciate. I think that's much more effective and it's going to be more efficient for the staff that have to clean the restrooms. That at this point is the only change. They were concerned that anything else that might change the footprint might change the cost. So the consideration of doors and other things of that sort were not included. We anticipate that with the approval of this and they go forth with the construction, it's going to be about $5,000 per year per bathroom for stocking paper goods and, costs associated with maintaining the restrooms. We think it's a great deal. This will provide control rooms for them in a safe fashion to monitor the wells that they have over at Fountain Park. And again, I think this is a great win-win between our 2 organizations. We have our Community Services Director here who is available to answer any questions that you may have. The next steps after tonight, assuming the council takes action on this, would be to go before the board and for their board to actually take action on this IGA. And then it would be moving forward, I believe, with a date of the end of May or June, correct? For the first restroom. You want to come up and kind of give an overview of the project schedule?
Sure. Thank you, Grady. Mayor and Council, the timeline for this is expected. Construction would be scheduled to begin right after the high school graduation is hosted in the park, so that's generally right around the Memorial Day holiday. They would like to break ground right after and use the summertime for the construction, knowing that that's our lowest usage time of the park. They would look to be done prior to the October festival, barring any unforeseen issues and things like that. So they would be done in early fall. Any other questions about the IGA?
Councilman Brown?
What a shocker, huh? Thank you. One question, do they have to pay their own sewer tap fees?
If I recall, we are sharing the cost of utilities, and I believe we are on the hook for the potable water and electricity, if I recall.
Through our IGA, they don't need to pay
Yeah, I
this.
was saying.
Well, the reason I ask that, I will go ahead and explain that. The reason I ask, our sewer tap fees are some of the highest, if not the highest in the state. And that's why I ask if they had to pay their own, it might make them think twice.
Thank you. Anybody else? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I had heard, and I maybe some clarification, but I had heard that the original cost estimates for these bathrooms at the park were way off. and I had heard that they had a board meeting at the sanitary district, that the numbers were more in line with like $3.9 million to actually build out these facilities that they're looking to do. Do you know if that's going to adversely affect their decision to proceed with this, and whether this is a done deal if we agree to this IGA right now, or if there's a risk that they ultimately will not even proceed with this build-out?
I haven't heard anything to that nature.
What I've heard is the structure itself for the 2 restrooms, and I might have the number wrong, but it was closer to something like $400,000, and that would be outfitting the control room in addition to the fixtures in the bathrooms and such, plus the dwelling structures. I had heard that somewhere, and I don't remember if it was an email from a citizen or something, but I did see a $3.9 million number, but not officially from the district. So I think that's some hearsay. We do have an out in the IGA that's before you. So they do have something that says in the event that something came back like it was really crazy expensive, and I hate to use that term crazy expensive because it doesn't say that in the IGA, obviously. But if it came back to a point where it wasn't financially feasible, that they had the ability to opt out of it. And we also have, I think there's an opt-out as well in the IGA for us as well.
There is. I believe, if I recall, and again, I'm going off the top of my head, that it's a 2-year window. If they choose not to move forward or it's not completed within 2 years, the IGA is null and void.
Councilman Spellich.
I'm looking forward to this. I thought the best bathroom I ever went in was at the Bellagio, but obviously if this is $3.9 million, I can't wait to use it. I guess my concern is that you have enough staff. I mean, obviously this is going to be, are we going to need to take somebody on for this, or what's the plan for staffing and cleaning?
There is a consideration for that. As many of you know, we have 1 full-time staff that services the entire park at Fountain Park. We do have several part-time staff that are on in the evenings and weekends. It will add to that workload, and we'll have to see how that plays out. It does add more burden on staff, but it is an amenity that is desperately needed within the park.
Councilman Magazine?
I just want to thank the sanitary district for moving ahead with this. I think it's badly needed. For some of us in advancing age, we need those restrooms closer. And I think this is going to, I think the public will really appreciate this, because we have a lot of functions. Now, for the major functions where we draw hundreds or thousands, obviously it's not going to be adequate.
Yep.
But on a day-to-day basis and so on, I think it will really help.
Any other? Oh, we have a speaker card, thanks.
Bob Shellstrom.
Hello again. I'm Bob Shellstrom from Fountain Hills. Just want to start this out with saying it's not hearsay. I have the actual report for them for the $3.7 million. The cost per just your space is about $400,000, but that doesn't include excavation, demolition, landscaping. It's much higher than that. Anyway, I'm from Chicago, and there a noted columnist, Mike Royko, once gave the town a motto. It's ubi est mea. What that means is, where's mine? What that referred to was a culture in Chicago, as I'm sure Ms. LaCrone and Mr. Spellich understands, is that if you want to get anything done, there had to be something in it for me. And in this case, these washrooms looks like that's that same kind of Chicago politics that did it. I took the effort of taking a look at saying, how many bathrooms should we have in something this size? So, having done a lot of work with the International Plumbing Code, which identifies the occupancy that you require, this looks like an occupancy A5, which relates to amusement parks and other meeting areas in the outside. For that, it says you should have 1 men's bathroom for every 70 men that are going to be at the location, and 1 woman's bathroom for every 40 women. So that means it's what you have right now is made for about 115 people. That's about what we normally have. Now, this is not for special events. So what this shows is, by code, we really don't have a need to add. So why are we doing it? Convenience. Well, that's fine, at a certain price. Now, since I do have the actual GMP estimate, which they paid $50,000 in pre-construction fees to a corporation to do. It's a $3.714 million project for just 2 of the 3 vaults. Now, a number of people here have said, well, they're going to pay for it. Well, excuse me, they're not. The fee users and taxpayers of Fountain Hills will be paying for it. The same people who voted for you people to be elected. Now, because this scope creep has gone insane, I think this council and mayor have a responsibility to set things right. This is more than it would cost us to line the entire lake, which I've heard a lot of screaming and gnashing of teeth is just an impossible expense. So what I expect from this board is to start working a little closer with the sanitary district and see what's fair to the people of Fountain Hills and to be able to get a compromise where they can take care of their problem, which some may forget was just a matter they were getting leaking into their vaults, which is able to be taken care of much more cheaply. It's a problem that's getting out of control quickly. This should not have gotten to 90% without this conversation and design. I believe the total cost for engineering and design is $137,000. God only knows how much they've paid already. The bottom line is, you guys have a responsibility to look out for the people who voted for you and the taxpayers and get this scope down to a reasonable amount for the value for the people of Fountain Hills that they would want from this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Do we have a motion on page 103?
Mayor, move to adopt Resolution 2019-14 approving the IGA with the Fountain Hill Sanitation District for 2 restroom facilities and well control rooms in Fountain Park.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Our next item is 8D, Rules of Procedure. You'll recognize this from our discussion at a retreat. Grady, or should I go straight to you, Liz?
We'll turn it over to our clerk,
Thank you.
Ms. Burke.
Mayor and Council, what is before you tonight is a resolution with the attached rules of procedures as were provided to the council during the recent retreat. Based on the input from council at that meeting, we've made changes to just a few of the sections. Just to recap those briefly, the consent agenda we'll just do by one motion rather than a roll call. In section 5.2, that amends the mayor's report that's currently at the beginning of the meeting. It will provide for reports by mayor, council members, and town manager, and it removes the reports at the end of the agenda. And it also highlights that public hearings are open at the beginning of the item. Under 9.1, it just updates the listing of our boards and commissions that we currently have. And then 9.2 is some streamlining that we're trying to do with boards and commissions and making them consistent, and changes some of the process. But to move that forward, we'll be coming back with separate ordinances for each of the boards and commissions that will put this all into the town code and make it more transparent for the public.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards on this item? No. Councilman Magazine.
I think this was very well done. It's long, but I did read the whole thing, and I learned a lot. Things that I just was not aware of, and I think that we take some things for granted in terms of our procedures and so on. One thing stuck out for me, it's 1.1D, Robert's Rules of Order, 10th edition as amended. I thought, it was my understanding that we don't follow Robert's Rules strictly, that there's a bastardization, if you will, of Robert's Rules. And I'd just like to clarify that.
Could you explain bastardization, please? I'm not sure we're all catching that. That has different meanings.
Modified. Town
Modified
attorney.
would be a better word.
Aaron.
The way that it's written is that we follow the following sources in order. So to the extent we have something in state law, town code, or council rules that differ from Robert's Rules of Order, those provisions will supersede Robert's Rules. So it's not really a modified version as much as it is, if we make modifications in our rules of procedure, those govern first. And I'm getting the nod of approval from Liz.
Mayor, I didn't see, maybe I missed it. Are there parts of the town code or state law that are not in accord with Robert's rules that are listed?
Sure.
Liz?
Is it in there?
I don't know if it's listed in here, but I mean, the state open meeting law would supersede anything that you find in Robert's rules.
I understand that. But with regard to both the state law and town code, are there other items that are not in agreement with Robert's rules that would take precedence?
I guess I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I mean, I can't point to one off the top of my head without having the code in.
Well, the reason I ask is because in the past, and it goes back probably a couple of years, on a couple of occasions, I stated things that I thought were in accord with Robert's rules, and I was told, well, we don't go by that. And so, it's okay, we don't have to go on at length about this, but I was just curious to know whether we had a listing of some kind that would, of items that would take precedence.
Council member Magazine, you remember that one maneuver you had a couple months ago that we were all kind of, the substitute motion, we were scratching our heads? I think that was part of Robert's rules, so you had one on us on that one.
Councilman Sharno? Look like you're ready.
No, I move to adopt Resolution 2019-15, approving the town council's rules of procedure amended and restated March 5th, 2019.
I'll second that.
2019-14, I think is the resolution. Yeah. I'm so sorry. I apologize.
14 or
I'm on the
15,
last
whatever.
item. I apologize.
We have, I think, a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks for all your work, Liz.
Well done.
And everybody involved. Next, we have discussion with possible direction about the Arizona Legislative Bulletin or anything related to that. Any discussion? Well, big surprise, I do, but it's nothing new. Basically, some of the things that we took positions on have progressed, so they've gone through the committees. So the one, 2672, which is the short-term rental bill, Representative Kavanaugh's bill, that went through rules yesterday. It was on Cal today, and I wasn't sure if we had any update.
The internet does not have an update for us yet. I apologize.
Okay, so I'm going to assume it passed on a voice vote. It could have been amended, but what we would do now, if possible, or if you agree, would be to have Grady write a note to leadership, so that would be Representative Bowers to, maybe by the time we're done here, it'll be on a third read, but we'd like it to be on a third read calendar, and we'd love it to get over to the Senate nice and clean. So the other one was there were two others that we had taken a position on, and I think one was the 2201, which would require a general election, would require partisan mayor council elections, and would require to have the general election, so we'd have to have two elections. So the league and the cities are not in favor of that because it forces this other election, among other things. That one is stalled right now, but that would be another one that could possibly go to Representative Bowers asking not to schedule it, so it's kind of the opposite of the other one, which I think that one, and the one about forcing judges to face election, municipal judges, which is 2043, so it's also a House bill. So that would go along with asking Representative Bowers to not schedule that bill if possible, and both of those bills do appear to be stalling right now. So if you're okay with that, we can ask Grady to write to Representative Bowers to support the short term and oppose the 2201, the two elections, and the judge facing election 2043. So we took those positions already, we're just not doing it online now, we're just going to send an email to Representative Bowers.
Correct.
Yes. So if that's okay with you, do you want us to vote on that? Are you,
Might be cleaner. It gives us a little bit more of a voice on these matters if the council's fine with that, maybe by individual number, bill
okay.
number.
Vice Mayor?
Any discussion?
Of course.
Okay. Two of the representatives on two of these bills are our representatives for our district. I had mentioned last time of having an opportunity to potentially invite our representatives here to address us as to what their bill is and why they feel important that they're putting it forward. I still think that's a good idea. I still think that even though they are in session, that if they're going to advocate for their bill, this would be a platform to do so. And prior to us as a council making a decision to write a letter to the legislature when, again, both of them are our representatives in our communities, I think it would be respectful to at least reach out to them and ask them for comment.
Thank you. The judge one is, but the 2201 is not our guys. But, you know, and I'm all for having them come, really. I think we should, but I think it's kind of almost impossible for them to come in session, because even if they said they could, something could come up. You know, I've worked there for 10 years, so I know what it's like, and they could have the best of intentions to come and then still not to be able to make it. But we are, of course, welcome to email or call them at any time to let them know how we feel, yay or nay on certain things. If you don't want to do the one about the judge, because that one is one of ours, that's fine. It's up to you all.
You have 4 on this sheet, so you're indicating that you only want to take action on 2?
Well, I'm not going by that necessarily. That's-
Actually, in the
yeah.
last meeting, the council did give direction to me on Senate Bill 1460. That was a Ugenti bill. So
That's-
that was one that
Oh, okay.
council opposed at the last meeting because of the huge economic impact on cities and towns on collection of sales tax.
That's true. 1460, I was only talking about those other House bills, but if you want to talk about 1460, the way we can do that, maybe, which you'd be comfortable with, is that we are supporting the league position because the league is in negotiation on this bill, and it's looking pretty good. So we wouldn't be saying we oppose it, we would be saying we support the league position, which is actually that's the action we took last time. That was the motion that Councilman Charno made. So we are in support of the league position, and at this point, we would still be doing that because I think there's some good faith negotiations going on with that one. Councilman Magazine?
With regard to HB 2672, vacation rentals, we've had so much controversy and so many problems with vacation rentals, short-term rentals, and so on. Apparently it passed one committee 7-0. It looks like it could become law. I wonder if we know what the practical impact of that is versus what we now are able to do.
Do you want to answer that, or?
Sure. I mean, I can give you a brief overview based on the fact sheet. Now, recognize that what I'm telling you could have changed on the floor today. There could be amendments made that were either adopted previously or on the floor. Some of the changes, the most significant ones, would be restriction of the number of persons on site based on the number of bedrooms. I think the proposed language was no more than 2 people per bedroom in the house, right? And then, let's see, a requirement that guests that are not renters of the property vacate by 10 p.m. Cities and towns can require installation of safety monitoring equipment, and then I think the big one was requiring the Department of Revenue to suspend or revoke a lodging operator's license for a violation or for some series of violations of the new statute or the proposed statute. Some of those things have might have been taken out today. I'm not sure what happened, but some of the proposed amendments were revoking the 10 p.m. either completely or changing it, and providing a slightly higher bar for revocation of an operator's license, I think, is one of the big ones. But in large part, those are the big ways that it would differ from what's currently there, which is there is very little oversight that cities and towns are able to have on short-term rentals as it currently stands.
I recall that one of the biggest problems we had in one location was that the owner who didn't live there was going on ARB and renting out the house for major functions and so on with lots and lots of people. Does this affect this in any way?
Go ahead.
So my understanding is the way that the bill stands currently, there was a section in there that basically allowed the cities and towns to regulate for the health, safety, and welfare of the community. There's also a section in there that has to do with zoning, upholding our ability to regulate for zoning. So in the case that you brought up, a wedding venue, that would definitely, we would be able to enforce that because wedding venues are supposed to be in commercially zoned areas. Now, it's not to say you couldn't host a wedding in your own home, but if it's specifically a rental for somebody to hold a wedding and a wedding reception at a property, that is strictly our ability to regulate that through zoning. And they're, right now, they're enforcing, I shouldn't say enforcing, they have a provision in the bill that allows us to continue to do that.
Good. Thank you.
Just want to add to that, Councilman, that the league said, don't let, what is it, excellent be the enemy of good or something. Yeah, that, the idea of trying to repeal the bill that took away all the restrictions that's not realistic. And everybody, I think, is trying their best to do this in a way where the folks that run some of these places and the Airbnb types and then the community neighborhood organizations can get together on something. So this seems like something that Representative Kavanaugh is working hard on. And so if somebody would like to make a motion to say that we would have Grady send a note to Representative Bowers in our support for 2672. And, I mean, if we just want to do that, I'd also urge to say we oppose 2201, forcing a second election on us. And if you're okay with him sending a letter to Senator Fan saying we support the league position on 1460. Because I don't know, I don't even know if I can make a motion. Ask Robert's rule of law.
Well, if Liz got all that, I'll go ahead and make that motion, so.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Next is the discussion with possible direction to any item. Is the discussion and direction to the town manager, directing staff to conduct any further research, anything on that item? That's number 9.
Mayor, I do have
Yes.
something on that. So we spoke in the past, we spoke at our retreat in regards to public safety issues. We talked about the many incidences that we've had with traffic and pedestrian accidents. I think we need to take action, and I think we need to do something sooner than later. I don't think we need a major study to figure out what we need to do, specifically in the downtown area. The downtown area from El Lago to Palisades needs to be slowed down. The traffic needs to be slowed down. If we have the ability and the authority as a council to drop that speed limit to 25 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour, if we have the ability to put those speed bubbles on the road like Cave Creek has, we should be doing it, and we should be doing it now. I'm tired of these accidents. I'm tired of people getting injured, and the traffic is getting ridiculously fast over there. So I just wanted to put that on record.
Thank
We
you.
need to do something about it, and we need to do it now.
So,
Manager?
yeah, I just want to let you know that the mayor and I had the exact same conversation, I believe it was yesterday, on the phone about the same concern. So she basically said the same thing. Anything that we have the ability to do, just do it, and just, and come back and just share that with the council. The mayor also had a great idea. She had suggested just a small internal team, including herself and another member of council, the public works director, the police captain, and myself to get together, look at things. But we also know that there's things that there's some measures that our public works director can do, such as what you mentioned, the rumble strips and things like that that slow people down. We also talked about putting LEDs on the stop signs at Saguaro and the Avenue, because people tend to blow through that intersection. So those are things that we're also currently working on. I know that we've gone through and started doing restriping of all the town streets. So at night, they reflect really well, they stand out. But thank you. We will be coming back to you with some recommendations, but we're going to be taking action and actually telling you a lot of things that we've already done. On the Avenue specifically, we have CK Engineering that is looking at changing the crosswalk between the two medians so that you just can take out those knee walls and just walk directly and make that always stop. So those are some intersection improvements there. We've also talked about trying to narrow the avenue. So right now, that's part of the problem is people try to create 2 lanes in each direction when it really is supposed to be 1. So those are some things that with paint striping we could probably do. So, but we will be coming back with you and giving a report on this shortly.
Thank you. Don't forget, we can only limit our discussion to putting this on the next agenda, so we can't go too far into this. But yes, Councilman.
Can I discuss that? What he was just
Aaron?
discussing?
You know, I think we kind of went too far already with this.
Madam Mayor, I'll defer to your.
No, I'm deferring to you. I
Well,
want your
you
advice.
want to talk about putting it on the next agenda item?
Well, either that or make sure that we take some action on this as suggested by the Vice Mayor, but we're not supposed to talk about the merits of what it is he's suggesting we put on and.
That would be correct. My
Yeah.
interpretation.
So-
But
I don't know where I am. I'll start to talk and you can shut me up. How's that?
Yes, sir.
With regard, about a month ago, when leaving a council meeting, I blew through a stop sign, and I told Grady about it in the dark. Couldn't begin to see it till it was too late. And I asked whether or not we could put reflectors or something on all stop signs and yield signs, and I'd like that looked at.
Okay. All right, no more talking. Thank you, we appreciate it. We understand that is on an urgent level, so. Next is the council request report on recent activities by mayor, council members, and town manager. Grady is going to tell us a little bit about meeting with Sheriff Penzone.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, there was a meeting that we held last Friday. It was with Sheriff Penzone, Senior Deputy Chief Skinner, and also Chief of Staff Cherney. It was a very productive meeting. One of the reasons for the meeting is obviously the sheriff likes to get around and meet with the contract cities and see how things are going. But as you recall, the incident that we had a couple months ago in the parking lot over here, there was some concern about seeing if there was anything that between MCSO and the town, how we can make that a little bit more of a secure lot. We had an opportunity to look at a report that came out from their Homeland Security Division that looked at the whole facility in addition to the parking area and had a really good discussion. We also had a good opportunity to talk about the rate increase that they have proposed for next year as part of the cost of service that's built into our intergovernmental agreement, and just kind of explain that that was a shocker to us and that we're going to be studying our other options, as it relates to that. So.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to report?
Yes.
Councilman Magazine?
I just looked it up, and there is the word bastardization.
Oh.
But I think it has multiple meanings.
Moving on. So I want to thank Councilman Charno and Vice Mayor for coming to the Town Talk Tuesday last week. I really appreciate it. We heard from folks, and I put some notes together, or Jim did, and so we'll go forward with some of those suggestions. Vice Mayor.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask you to move back to number 9 because I wasn't finished with a couple of council discussion direction of town manager requests. At our council retreat, we talked about a number of things, but one of which was improving on zoning areas and helping businesses to hopefully be successful. An idea that came up many years ago, 15 plus years ago, was to look at Saguaro Boulevard and look at the access road and trying to work with the property owners that currently own property there and determining whether there was a way to redesign that to eliminate that access road, provide additional parking in their places of business, and having one access road which would create a more safer area. I'd like to put on a future agenda for discussion, inviting and talking with the owners and trying to put together a meeting and discussing this a little bit further and seeing whether there's any interest that we can work with the owners of those properties and the town and come up with something that would be a win-win for everyone.
Okay. Is there any other item? I want to mention that our sister city, Ataco, El Salvador, the mayor, Oscar Gomez, is coming on Thursday. We're going to have an event here, a proclamation, and he will be meeting with the schools and all kinds of things for a couple of days. So he is welcome. Our council, Rick Melendez, will be picking him up at the airport, and we welcome here in the Sister Cities Commission, who will be meeting with him. And I think Mike Charno has something for us.
I do. I was at a meeting of the Fountain Hills Coalition last week, and Dave Gallagher was there. He runs a treatment program in Mesa, and he and his wife are part of an organization called Arizonans Concerned About Smoking. And apparently they had a meeting that we couldn't attend previously, but they do have a plaque and a certificate that this group wanted to present to the town, and I have it here. And basically, it concerns the town ordinance that was passed last year banning smoking in our public parks, along with the e-cigarettes and vaping and that kind of thing. So it's basically a health leadership award from the Arizonans Concerned About Smoking. And I know Vice Mayor Tallis and Councilman Dennis Brown and Allen Magazine were part of the council last year that passed that motion, and so we wanted to pass that on to the town and just thank everybody for doing that, and the organization just appreciates our support in those efforts. And they're also pursuing another item which I found interesting. There's kind of a movement among some cities and towns to increase the legal age to buy tobacco products to age 21. So it's at 18 right now, I believe. So we might be, asked to consider that in the future. I don't know, but anyway. So I just wanted to pass that on, and I know the mayor wanted to get a photo op with you three guys afterward, and Bob's ready for that. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilman.
And you wanted me to also mention that at the meeting that we couldn't attend, that Tempe Vice Mayor Lauren Kuby had accepted the plaque on our behalf and got it to Mayor Dickey. So,
thank you. Yeah. That's all I was going to add. So, anything for the good of the order? Do I get a motion to adjourn? Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Have a good night.